Okay, let's dive in. You've brought us a source looking at a place maybe not on everyone's radar.
That's right. This material is all about uncovering destinations that offer something, a bit different, away from the crowds.
And the focus for this deep dive, according to this source you shared, is, and I'm quoting here, West Africa's hidden gem, Burkina Faso.
Exactly. It's a travel piece, basically making the case for why this landlocked country is, well, seriously underrated. Lots to discover, it argues.
Right. So our job here is to unpack this source, figure out what it sees as the main draw, what makes it unique from its perspective, and pull out the key spots and experiences it mentions. We're not just listing things, we're digging for those interesting bits, the aha moments in the material.
Absolutely. We'll help you sort through the insights in the source you've provided.
Okay, let's get started then. What's the source's, core argument? Why Burkina Faso?
Well, the main thrust of the article is authenticity. It really hammers home that Burkina Faso is genuinely off the beaten track. It offers a very different, maybe rawer experience than more mainstream destinations.
Okay, authenticity. So, realness. What specific reasons does the source actually list to back that up?
It gives quite a few. Things like deep cultural roots and traditions that are still very much alive day to day.
Okay.
Unique tribal art and crafts, not just tourist trinkets,
Okay.
Locals described as really warm, welcoming, a rich heritage of music and dance that's part of the culture, authentic African festivals, and surprisingly varied landscapes.
And he uses that phrase, doesn't it? Something like a raw and real taste of West African life. That kind of sticks.
It does, and what the source implies, which is important in a West African context, is how these things aren't separate. Culture isn't just in a museum.
Right.
It's in the art, the music you hear on the street, how people connect. The source seems to suggest it's all interwoven.
Yeah, that makes sense if you're looking for travel that's more immersive, not just ticking off sites, connecting with a living culture.
Exactly that.
All right, let's follow the source's path then. It highlights some key locations, starting with the capital.
Yes, Ouagadougou, often just called Ouaga in the material. It's described straight away as the country's cultural heartbeat.
And what does the source point to in Ouaga? Bustling markets, it says, like the Grand Marché, the artisan village.
Those are mentioned. Also a lively nightlife and music scene, the National Museum. But then it adds a couple of really distinct things.
Oh, yeah.
The Leongo Sculpture Symposium. It's described as this unique open-air park, filled with sculptures carved right into granite boulders.
Wow, okay. An open-air granite sculpture park.
Yeah.
That definitely paints a picture. You don't see that everywhere.
No, you don't. It's just a different way of thinking about art and public space. And then there's the Moranaba Palace.
Right.
And the source specifically points out that weekly traditional ceremonies still happen there.
Whoa, hold on. Weekly traditional ceremonies right in the capital's palace. That detail, pulled from the source, really drives home that point about living tradition, doesn't it? That's a big aha moment.
It really is. It shows the cultural roots aren't just history. They're, current, active.
Okay, so from Ouaga, the source then moves us on, I see, to the second largest city.
That's right, Boa-Dioulasso. And the source describes this one as having a more relaxed atmosphere, a different feel from Ouaga's energy.
And key things to see there, according to the article. The Grand Mosque is mentioned.
Yes, and it makes a point of mentioning the Sudanese-style architecture. The mud brick look, those sort of conical minarets, very distinctive. It also talks about the old Kibidwe district with its traditional mud brick houses, the Hue Provincial Museum, and just the general vibe of street music, drumming.
So, if I'm reading the source right, Ouaga's the heartbeat with institutions, the palace ceremonies. But Boa-Dioulasso offers this contrast. A more laid-back vibe, showcasing that specific mud brick architecture, the old town feel, plus maybe more spontaneous street music.
That seems to be the contrast the source is drawing, yes. Two different flavors of urban culture in the country.
Okay.
Then the source takes a big shift, geographically, heads south near Banfora to focus on nature.
Ah, right. This must be where that diverse landscapes point comes in.
Definitely. It groups a few natural sites. The Cascades de Carfiguela waterfalls, good for swimming, apparently.
Nice.
The domes of Ouagadougou, described as these kind of mystical rock formations with great views. Lake Tingrela.
Lake Tingrela. Oh, that's the one with the sacred hippos and canoeing.
That's the one. And then it mentions the Sindhu Peaks. Ancient, jagged rocks, the source calls them. But crucially, the source doesn't just say, go hiking. It notes opportunities to connect with local communities nearby and, importantly, to understand the cultural significance tied to these landscapes.
That's a key detail the source adds. So the natural beauty isn't just pretty scenery. It actually means something culturally. I mean, just picturing that. Waterfalls, weird rock domes, a lake with hippos, climbing ancient peaks that are culturally important. That's quite a range.
It really highlights a depth beyond just the visual, according to this article. And still in the south, the source mentions a specific spot for wildlife, Nazinga Game Reserve.
The safari element. What does it list? Elephants? Antelope.
Elephants, antelope, warthogs, crocodiles, yeah. And over 300 bird species are mentioned too.
So it suggests a fair bit of biodiversity there, a proper wildlife experience, even if it's not, one of the super famous African parks.
Seems so. It presents it as the place for that in the country.
Okay, cities, check. Green, natural south, check. Then the source flips things again, right? Takes us way north. Gorum, edge of the Sahel.
Exactly. Described as the gateway to the Sahel, that transitional zone south of the Sahara. Very different character up there.
And what does the source highlight? A weekly market, drawing people from across the desert.
Yeah, that's a key image. Camel caravans, the desert landscapes themselves, and the chance for cultural exchanges with groups like the Tuareg and Fulani peoples who are traditionally nomadic in this wider region.
So this part really contrasts with the south we just talked about.
Absolutely. The source makes that contrast clear. You go from, waterfalls and forests to these arid landscapes and the culture of desert edge peoples meeting in market towns. It paints a picture of the country's sheer geographical and cultural breadth.
It definitely conveys a sense of diverse experiences packed into one place. Now, beyond locations, the source also really emphasizes cultural events.
Yes, it makes a big point that festivals are vital to Burkina Faso's cultural life. It specifically details FESPACO.
Right, the big film festival.
The Festival Pan-Africain du Cinéma et de la Télévision de Ouagadougou. And the source stresses this is the largest African film festival. Happens every 2 years.
And there's another big one mentioned, SIAO.
The International Art and Craft Fair of Ouagadougou, called Africa's premier artisan exhibition in the article.
So why does the source focus on these two?
Well, because they're not just local events. FESPACO and SIAO are huge continent-wide platforms. They're presented as major showcases of African creativity film, crafts, drawing people from all over Africa and beyond. The source uses them to position the country as a real hub for African arts.
That makes sense. If you're promoting the country, you definitely point to these major cultural celebrations recognized across Africa.
Precisely. And it also mentions that more generally, traditional music and dance festivals happen in various regions too.
Okay, so finally, the source gets practical. It includes tips for anyone actually thinking about going, based on its descriptions.
Yeah, quick rundown. Getting there, Ouagadougou International Airport, OUA. It notes connections might be limited, so reliable booking is important.
Accommodation lists a whole range. Luxury eco-lodges, guest houses, even village stays, it says.
Transportation acknowledges public transport can be tough rurally, but inner-city options are there. It specifically recommends renting a car for flexibility.
Especially for those remote nature spots it mentioned earlier, like Banfora or Nazinga.
Exactly. Then the key travel tips. Visa needed. Apply ahead. Currency is the West African CFA franc, XOF.
Language.
French is official, but more and Dioula are key local languages mentioned. Safety usual advice. Stay informed. Use good local guides. Health yellow fever vaccine is a requirement, and malaria precautions are essential.
Right. Standard but crucial info.
And interestingly, the source material itself mentions a specific online platform, flightandhotels.com.
Ah, okay.
It's presented as a resource for comparing and booking flights, hotels, cars, specifically for Burkina Faso. The source states it offers transparent pricing and customer support.
Okay, so just to be clear, the source material points to that platform as a tool for planning the kind of trip it's describing. It's information from the source on logistics.
Correct. It's included as part of the practical planning info within the article we're looking at.
Got it. So, wrapping up everything we've pulled from your source on Burkina Faso, the big picture seems to be this portrayal of a really intriguing, maybe overlooked destination full of culture, nature, and these authentic experiences.
Yeah, the source definitely paints that picture. It takes you from the buzz of Ouaga and the chill vibe of Bobo down to the waterfalls and wildlife of the south, and then flips to the desert culture of the north, plus those major festivals.
It certainly reinforces the idea the source puts forward.
Yeah.
A country rich in tradition, maybe waiting to be explored by people seeking something a bit different.
It makes a strong case for that kind of traveler, yes.
So, thinking about everything this source covered, from those ancient meaningful rocks to the massive film festival, here's something maybe for you, the listener, to chew on. In a world where so much feels discovered and documented, what does it really mean to seek out a place described by a source like this as a hidden gem? And maybe more pointedly, what can someone learn from a culture where, as the source highlights, even in the capital city, they still hold weekly traditional ceremonies right at the palace?
Those details the source included. Yeah, they really make you think about tradition versus tourism and what authentic actually looks like on the ground.
Definitely something to reflect on, based purely on what the source material shared with us today. Perhaps it'll prompt you to look a bit deeper into the things that caught your attention.